Okay, are we
Hello.
on?
Yeah,
Oh,
we're on. Yeah. Hello and welcome. Welcome to our session. Sorry for being a little bit late. I'm here with Lisa Levasseur from Internet Safety Labs, and we have a two-part session going on this today and then in 2 weeks. The first part is called Call Them Products: Why Apps, Platforms, and Digital Services Should Be Treated Like Products. And I'm really looking forward to this, Lisa, because you have a real different view than other people that I've seen. So I will hand over to you.
um, okay, great. I'm finally seeing it. There's a bit of a delay, I guess, in the viewing it there. Okay, sorry. I'm getting my bearings. Thanks so much, Angeline. Thank you so much for setting this up and making this happen. This is near and dear um, kind of topic for me, and I'm kind of coming out of my shell a little bit with it and really looking forward to getting this material out into the world for discussion and for scrutiny. And yeah, so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and how do I share screen?
Wait, Lisa, I think there's an issue. We're not live.
It was a super delay. I'm seeing it now.
Okay. Go
I'm
from.
watching in LinkedIn.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. Wanted to make sure. So,
Yeah, no, I have it up here because at first I didn't see it, but it's just a significant sort of delay. So
okay.
okay, and it looks like maybe it's just us right now, but okay, um, okay, share screen, entire screen. Okay, all right. Uh, are you seeing my screen?
Yes, I see your screen.
Wonderful. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so the first part of this is I just want to introduce this topic of why product safety. And one note that I will, and it will be painfully obvious, but these slides are 100% human made. No AI was used in producing this material. So digital products have gone from harmful to deadly. I think most of the people who would be drawn to this topic are fully aware of this situation. We started off with, oh, these products are just, they just abuse my privacy. That I don't mind. I have nothing to hide. To now, they are turning deadly. So, what is going on? We've been regulating for quite a long time now. Um, we're not infants in this process of regulation, but we don't seem to be tamping down or diminishing the harms. The harms just keep going up. So what is going on? Why is this happening? um I have several reasons for this. One, I think we don't call these things products, and I believe this is a feature and not a bug. Excuse me, and I'll say more about that. But we don't call them products, and that's separates our sense of accountability when we don't call them products. Also, the regulations that we have really are band-aids. They're band-aids, lots of little band-aids, and they're sort of flawed because they're not really fit for purpose. The regulations that we have are not fit for purpose for governing the behavior of the products, and we're going to talk a lot about that in this material. Also, there's a kind of product safety complacency or a sine wave that happens. Excuse me. A product safety complacency that happens. So every sort of generation, we fight a battle with, every new product category introduction, we fight a battle for product safety that takes decades. And then we win that battle, and then we sort of coast for a while in the safety that we've made. And then we forget about that battle. We sort of age out of that. And the next generation, the next category, new product introduction comes up. And it has to be an entirely new set, a new generation to fight these battles. So we have a sort of amnesia cycle that happens. We fight, we win, we forget that we had to fight for that. So the next thing that comes up, we're sort of caught flat-footed. And finally, industry has never and will not self-govern when it comes to product safety. They will not go gently into product safety. That is a fact of the matter since the start of the industrial age. So we've got a lot of forces kind of working against this. In this research that I had worked on and have been working on and continue to work on, a paper was published in February of this year, and I put the link at the bottom of this. But I looked back at how product safety happened for these product categories that we have, these massive product categories of interest. And the thing I want to point out here is that on average, it takes about 50 years for the first real safety regulation to occur, and 50 years from mass product introduction. And this is all, most of my data is from the US. So these numbers will reflect the US for the mass production. And the safety labeling activities lag an additional 10 years from that. So about 60 years later from mass product availability. So this is a natural lag that we see. I think there's a lot of reasons why this lag exists. So where are we with digital products? And as I define digital products in the next presentation that you're going to hear today, you're going to see that the dawn or the start of mass availability of digital products, I mark it in 1993. In earlier versions, I've said 1983, but actually, we need the mass availability of the internet, which comes a little bit later. And even then, arguably in 1993, it was not a pleasant experience, modem connections to the internet and whatnot. But let's say it started in 1993. That was the start of mass consumer availability of digital products. So we're 33 years into this. And if we overlay the digital product category into this chart, we can kind of see where we are. You can see that I have we had an earlier introduction in government. We had early research in these kinds of digital products, but the start of mass introduction is 1993. So we're 33 years and counting, and industry is not cooperating with product safety, I think, as we are all fully aware. There's some verbal agreement to want regulation, but I don't think it's genuine. We can do better. We can pick up the mantle of what our forebears fought for product safety for other products, and we can do the same for digital products. And this product safety framing will actually result in more effective governance than what we've been doing today, which I sort of refer to as whack-a-mole product governance that we're trying to do with technology. And so if we adapt our existing ideas, we already have a very robust toolkit of how we fight for product safety and how we succeed. We can adapt those, and we can adapt the governance practices to account for the peculiarities of digital products to be able to successfully get the safe products that we all want. So this series of webinars and workshops, if you want to call them that, these are the things I want to cover. First of all, call them products. We need vocabulary for how to talk about these products as a category. And that's super important. And the precision, I contend that the precision of this vocabulary will help us govern better. Then we need to look at how we have governed the tools in our toolkit of how we have governed product safety for non-digital products, and how do we adapt those? How do we govern this new category of products? That'll be in 2 weeks' time. That's what we're going to talk about. And then part of the going from theory to practice on all of this is there's a lot of standardizing that has to happen. We need to standardize this language between both technologists and policymakers. We really need to harmonize efforts in a way that isn't happening right now. And the chasm between technology development and policymakers and legal understandings and legal definitions is contributing to the difficulty in the governance. So standardizing on language, standardizing on taxonomies. What are the different types of digital products within the category? What are the harms that these kinds of products can deliver on us? What are the harmful software patterns? We need to have taxonomies around this. Right now, we have many taxonomies, and that's to be expected in a nascent situation, right? That's the messy beginning of something, and that's okay. We also need to standardize really on what safety standards look like for digital products. So that's what this whole thing is about. And this is really the start, hopefully, of a movement that can cohere a lot of disparate activities and efforts into maybe something more focused, more penetrative, and ultimately more effective. So that is the start of that. And I don't know if there are any questions or how I might even see anything.
I have a question, Lisa. You said that you think it's by design. Like, well, what impacts do you think that means in practice? The fact that it's not called products.
I'm going to start with that in the next one. Okay. So that's like a really good segue. Shall I just proceed to the next one?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll proceed to the next one. Let me just get my bearings again on this. Share. And then, okay. Can you see this one that says part 1, call them products? I hope
yes.
So. Okay, yes. Good. Okay, so you set me up beautifully. And again, this is 100% human made. This is call them products. Right now, we call them everything but products. And historically, we have called them everything but products. We call them apps. We call it software. We call them platforms or services or online services. And we also call it an entirely different place. It's the online world or the digital world. And what I'd like to suggest to you all is that this vocabulary has the effect of diminishing in us a sense of manufacturer responsibilities. It distances us from who is responsible for the safety of these things. And so what has happened is we have got a lot of civil society and a lot of great work going on that is education oriented and teaching us how to be safe in the online world. And to me, this is almost gaslighting. We have to teach ourselves to be safe from products that we don't understand, and often even the manufacturers don't understand. It's not a fair fight. We can't open the hood. It's not like a car where we can at least have a gander and, try to get our bearings on it. This is technology that is invisible to us. And as we're going to find out, increasingly complicated and complex. And so it's really not a fair framing to frame it this way. And if we frame them as products, what we gain is manufacturer accountability, because as soon as we say product, there's a manufacturer. It's actually, that word brings up two sides of the coin. If there's a product, there's a manufacturer. And so you can't think about a product without almost thinking about a manufacturer. And I think that's important in how we get our arms around governing this stuff. What we also gain is the time-tested product safety strategies that I mentioned in the previous presentation. We have all of these tools at our disposal. We can adapt and apply them. I also suggest that this product safety focus, it's a more holistic focus. And instead of this whack-a-mole, death by 1,000 regulatory cuts, we can perhaps have a more coherent and concentrated and holistic focus. And we can also ideally reuse existing product safety law, products liabilities. In the US, it's called products liabilities. We can reuse a lot of what already exists. Part of the strategy, and we see, of course, the lobbying against all of the technology governance laws and bills and proposals. We see that, but also just the generation of new laws is a kind of delay tactic that favors industry. Because the longer the laws are tied up in courts and fought and enjoined, like the age-appropriate design code laws that are enjoined in various states in the US, the more those are, the more the whole endeavor of getting safer products is delayed. So this is an important governance strategy that we'll talk more about next time. So when I talk about the product safety accountability strategies that we have at our disposal, this is an adaptation from something that I found in the Handbook of Research on International Consumer Law. This was a table written by Luke Nottage, which I have vastly adapted. He originally only had the first 3 buckets of markets, private law, public law. I added in consumer action and civil society because those are extremely important, especially in digital products. They have also had a place in all of the other product categories that preceded this moment. But this first cluster is markets. What this means is like what industry does to govern itself, really, and what it does to show accountability. And you can see here's our consumer education. And I will point out that this is a primary tool that industry loves. And on the right, I've added this whole stoplight score for, is this tactic in use for the digital product category? And you can see here that this is well in use for digital digital products. And I call it DIY product safety. Industry has a very long track record. I'm going to mention this again when we proceed here in a minute. But anyway, you can see, so this is what industry does. And this is private law, the next bucket that we have, and then public law. And what you can see here in the stoplight scorecard is that we're mostly yellow and red, meaning these strategies have not been fully deployed. And again, that is what we expect for where we are right now. It's nascent. We're nascent. But you can see the things that are having impact, that are making change. The whistleblowers have been crucial in getting accountability. We're seeing class action lawsuits quite a bit that are gaining momentum and acting as a change agent for manufacturer accountability. And we are seeing regulatory action, of course, in the US and in the EU. So we are seeing some of this, and I want to suggest that critical first steps that we'll talk about more next time are tackling mandatory product behavior standards and product labeling. And there's a reason why I've circled just part of these, and we'll talk more about that next time. So going back to the research that I did looking at earlier product categories and product safety rollout, there's an interesting pattern that happens. We've seen it in the automobile industry most profoundly, I would say, but we also see it in other industries. And what we see is that there is a sequence and a preference of how industry will accept and actually analyze root causes of product harms. And they start with the consumer, with blaming the consumer. And, oh, you didn't use the product the right way. And with vehicles, this absolutely happened. And I'll save my example for the next slide, where I go through the automobile timeline on this. But they like to start with blaming the consumer. And then once they've sort of run out of steam with that, then they might blame the usage environment. And with cars, again, we're going to talk about that because that was a very important aspect of safety and a tangible aspect of safety. And then the next thing that they might reluctantly acknowledge is like, well, maybe there's something we should be doing. And this is where usually education might come in, and maybe manufacturing norm changes. Oh, we'll do things a little bit differently, but they're not yet, until the very, very end, reluctantly do they admit there's something wrong with the product. This is sort of the last step. They will try everything else before admitting there is something wrong and we have to make a change in the product itself. It is, and this is a very typical cycle, and you can see it and you can watch it yourself. It's interesting. Once you have this vocabulary and these tactics, you can start to see them and find them in the wild, and it's very interesting to watch them. So automobiles is a very interesting historical look at these things in effect. In the earliest days of accidents in vehicles, in the very, very earliest days, when police investigated accidents, they only looked at the driver behavior. They never looked at anything else, really. They might look at the conditions of the road. That would be, of course, the next step on our path of root cause analysis. They might look at the road condition and factor that in. And of course, industry quickly started to fund research and road improvement projects to, because they realized that causal connection. And this was good. All of this, by the way, this is good. And then they started to take corporate responsibility in the sense of funding driver safety and road safety. That's all part of this piece. And they also created professional organizations and self-governance standards like the Society of Automotive Engineers and the Automobile Manufacturers Association. These were the first attempts at kind of standardization, and they were industry funded and industry favorable. And then finally, reluctantly, through the work of Ralph Nader in the Corvair, the 1960 Corvair case, where the vehicle, and he proved that the vehicle was flipping over all by itself because of a bad design, an axle design. And through those efforts, he was able to drive home the fact that these products were by themselves unreasonably dangerous. The first call for public call for vehicle looking at the product and making sure the product was safe was in 1931, but it didn't happen until it was litigated. Decades. It took decades also before the standards came and before the product changes were mandatory. It was highly, highly resisted. And then the one thing I want to point out is that there was a strong push away from design standardization by industry. And it makes sense why it was like this. Like, don't tell us how to build our product. Just tell us the parameters that it has to operate within. Like, tell us the guardrails that we have, the thresholds that we have to operate within. We're going to talk in particular next time about why we may not be able to have clear lines about that with digital products. Okay, so talking broadly about digital products in general, how do products harm consumers? There are three primary ways. They might have harmful ingredients. They might, the behavior of the product, like that 1960 Corvair, the behavior of that was a mechanical product. It had behavior, and it was dangerous, and it harmed the occupants of those vehicles. And the third way is weaponization. And this is a category when an otherwise, not a weapon turns into a weapon. Take a hammer, which is a tool that is, used for constructing and building things, that can be weaponized by a human being. And so it's worth looking at this, especially in the context of the digital product category, because again, everything gets a little funny with digital products. They're complicated, but they're not beyond us. So how do we adapt and apply our ideas of these harms to digital products, and coming at it by looking at the forgive the word here, analog of these harms on digital products? We're going to come at a definition of digital products too. Okay, so I want to start with the harmful ingredients, right? The ingredients of digital products. So what's the analog for digital products? What are the digital product ingredients? I want to propose that there are two types of ingredients. One is, I'm going to call it broadly software. And there's something peculiar about software. There are two versions of this. There is source code, which is what the human being, the manufacturer, creates and writes. It is sort of inert. It's inactive until it's compiled into object code or executable, which is machine readable, which is then sort of, it's like the nervous system of a digital product. So I don't want to get too technical about this, but I do just want to acknowledge I am a software person, and I've done different versions of this where I've gone way down the rat hole with this stuff. I think this is an okay way to think about this. But the important thing about this software is that it is sort of the nervous system that causes digital products to behave. And we're going to talk a lot about that in a minute. There are two providers of software. And this is true of all of the products that we build, right? There's first-party components and third-party components. There is a supply chain. This is of note only because it didn't start off this way. For those of us who are old enough to have been writing software in the 70s, 80s, or that time frame, it was pretty much all like you wrote it yourself. There weren't third-party libraries. They weren't widely available. It's a completely different ballgame. How we produce software is completely different than we used to do it. And I would also contend that product management, software product management, has not kept up the art and science of supply chain management, but that's a whole different story. So I will fight the urge to talk about that. So if we consider a digital product then, and I've got just a simple example here, we've got this mobile device, and it actually, there is, whoops, let me go back. There's software in the mobile device, right? There's executable software running on the device itself. And there's also software that's not on the device, and it can be from the first party, but it can also be from third parties. So we've got this very complex situation where you've got first and third party software intermingling everywhere. And that's the reality of digital products. I hope it's not going to be too confusing to say this, but these third-party components are packaged up, and these are also digital products. They're just B2B digital products, and I'm going to talk more about that a little bit later when we get to like what is the full scope of digital products. There's another kind of digital product ingredient, and it is digitized information. And this is sort of passive in a way. It's stuff. It's the stuff. It's the payload. It's the stuff that is being moved around and acted upon and transformed and presented and shared. And it's the stuff that verbs apply to in a way. And I suggest that there are three kinds of digitized information. There is personal information, and this can be individually provided or bulk provided. It can be captured by the digital product in a number of ways. And there are three that I always gravitate towards, and that's being volunteered by the person using the digital product, being observed by the digital product, and being derived by the digital product. It can also, and we don't talk enough about this, but this is a real reality. It can be purchased. And all the product audits that we do, we, almost, I don't know, I want to say nearly all of them buy data. All of the companies buy data, personal data. It's a big piece of this. The second kind of digitized information is a broad bucket. I'm calling it product metadata. This is really the data that the digital product manufacturer needs to provide the expected product, to make sure the product is working right and to measure the performance and optimize and do what they need to do. I will mention that this personal information is really what's needed to provide the expected thing to the user. And if it isn't, it shouldn't be being collected. It's really kind of that cut and dry in my idealistic world. So this really is, and this is really the heart of the bargain, really, that users are making with digital products is, yes, I'm going to exchange this information because it's going to be valuable. The product you are providing is a valuable thing to me. So the bargain of this is acceptable. But this kind of data is more like for the manufacturer, for their purpose. And then finally, I'm proposing a term called packaged content. I don't know if this is the best term, but what I mean by this is any kind of little bundled, encapsulated, presented, and presentable to a human being packaged content. So it's for human consumption. It can be user created, like social media posts. You've got a whole, a community producing packaged content. You've got commercially created, as in video, streaming, ebooks, white papers, any kind of commercially created thing. Now, we've also got a lot of synthetically created packaged content. It can be chat. It can be text. It can be images, video, audio, and source code. So when I was saying about software and how this source code is sort of inactive kind of thing, it's a kind of digitized information. This is, here it comes again. Here it comes again as source code. Okay. I want to say something about packaged content. This is a quote from Susan Orlean in the library book, and it talks about, she talks about how books hold a different place in our world, and there for many of us. And she mentions that the poet Milton called this quality in books the potency of life. And I think this is very true. She talks in this part of the book about like not being able to destroy a book or throw a book away. So these books, this information, this kind of packaged information, which these books are, by the way. So the reason I wanted to bring up books is that they are the non-digitized version, the original, the OG, in a way, of packaged content, packaged information. And we relate to them in peculiar ways that are worth mentioning. So this packaged content I mentioned, it can be lots of different ways in the digitized packaged content. And it's created by multiple different entities. And the thing I want to point out about it is because of this quality, this potency of packaged content, the written word books, we actually have a whole bunch of laws that recognize that potency. And I'm equating it here to harmful ingredient, right? Because we're in the ingredient section of digital products here. And so we have this sort of innate sense that there's a potency of books that presents some risks. And we have a bunch of governance around that, which is interesting to think about. We also have governance in the form of copyright laws for the commercially created packaged content, right? That's where we protect that, the intellectual property rights laws. So there's already precedent, governance and precedents, and of course it's affecting digital product governance in some peculiar and perverse ways, right? So it's important to kind of take this look back and understand where this fits precisely in the digital product, where it begins and where it ends, and where it does apply and where it doesn't apply. So one way to acknowledge this potency is to think about these as consumables. This stuff is consumable. And it's sort of like brain food. And, we worry about what we ingest in our body. We worry about what we ingest in our minds. We do that. We don't really explicitly say that enough, perhaps. But I think it's important to call it out and to be clear about what is happening, what we are doing. Okay, so the four types of digital products that, the two types of digital products, software, and then the packaged, digitized content, digitized information. And so what we can say about this is personal data, we have a lot of governance in the form of data privacy laws emerging around this space. The packaged content we have, as we saw in the previous slide, we have some precedent on governance around that, right? We also, I think it's worth saying that this is brain food. I think it's also worth saying that it's AI food, meaning that this packaged content is being routinely scraped to feed the large models for generative AI products. That is an important eyes open reality that has all kinds of implications that I won't get into, but I do think it's worth noting. One final note from an ISL perspective, anything that falls in personal data, we see, of course, a lot of laws parsing out sensitive versus non-sensitive. I'm not sure it's all that constructive. For us, if the data is correlatable to a unique human being, if it's personal in that way, it's sensitive because it just gets combined and that's the reality of it. So we don't, we acknowledge the sensitive data, but we're not entirely sure that that's more than a speed bump, honestly. Okay, the second thing we're going to look at here of harms is product behavior. And so this is where digital products are very different. That software, the executable, right? That's the nervous system of these digital products. It is the thing that allows these products to behave and act with us and on us. So they exhibit this sort of autonomous behavior, meaning that there's not a hand in the puppet, right? Like this is not what is it? The Mechanical Turk. There's not a human being playing chess in this thing. This is software that is controlling it, and so it acts autonomously, semi-autonomously, increasingly autonomously, and it's dynamic. It gets over-the-air updates, and it is increasingly complex, non-deterministic, and unpredictable. This is non-trivial. Like the arc of complexity only goes one way. It goes up and to the right. It never comes back down and gets simpler, right? This product complexity just keeps getting more so. And non-determinism didn't just come with neural networks and machine learning. We had it before that. We have it with real-time bidding architecture. That is non-deterministic, unpredictable. It's never the same river of bidders twice. It also is very opaque. Like we cannot open the hood and see the bits going and what's happening and, what's going on. So it lacks opacity. There are two observable behaviors. One is the interaction with human users, right? Like that's our window into this. We can understand from our experience with these digital products how it can act and interact with us. We can also watch using network, tools to analyze communication happening with non-human entities. So we can view the communication going in and out of the digital product. We can't see readily, like I was just saying, we can't really see that internal computation and transformation on the digital information. We don't have a window into that happening. We can't watch it happen in real time. We can only see the artifacts that make it out one end or the other. So this human interaction opens up its own set of risks. So the human interaction is increasingly multimodal, meaning audio, visual, tactile, all, like we're increasingly trying to make it more human-esque and multimodal. This introduces its own risks, including anthropomorphic deception, meaning we confuse this with a human being and we imbue it with more trust and integrity than perhaps we should. It also, the human interaction, even just the visual, right, the user interface that we see on a screen, can be deliberately manipulative. It can, be designed to subvert or impair our autonomy, decision-making, or choice. And we're getting smarter about how to catalog those and observe those and catch those. This allows manufacturers to prioritize their own objectives over the consumer human needs and safety. And we see this also with deliberately addictive. Another critical component, and this is sort of the other side of the behavior, right, is the connectivity. And this is connectivity to computers, possibly somewhere else in the world. And this brings in risks of surveillance, which of course we are knee-deep in. We're knee-deep in commercial surveillance and governmental surveillance, and those worlds have collided in alarming fashion in the past, 18 months in the US in particular, except they've always been connected. So this connectivity piece of the behavior facilitates sharing of packaged ideas and information, really the digitized information, with unwanted, unintended, unexpected people, entities, things, all of the above. So what I've kind of articulated without really saying it is a digital product necessarily has these four characteristics. It's software driven. It's connected to the internet or connected to something that connects to the internet, has a user interface, and it deals with digitized information. That's its blood. That's its medium, digitized information. And these four characteristics alone and in concert enable novel product safety risks, the likes of which we haven't had to deal with in prior products. Have a little summary chart. I'm not going to go through that in the interest of time here. But you might be wondering now, where do they begin and end? Where does this category begin and end? And I suggest that it includes apps on whatever platform they're running, but any kind of app that you can, as an individual, acquire and use. It includes hardware-based products, everything, from computers to appliances, anything that satisfies these four things. And this connection to the internet, like, again, for those of us who are old enough to remember when we bought shrink wrap software, it wasn't connected to the internet. So this whole set of risk was not there in the early days of software. And it was really the alchemy of all of this stuff that heightened the potential for risk. I mentioned that B2B packaged B2B offerings like SDKs and APIs are also digital products. They're not for consumers, but they're for businesses, and they're packaged and they have those four qualities. I also suggest that these other B2B offerings that we might call services or platforms, but analytics, most consumer digital product manufacturers will use third-party analytics. They don't build their own analytics engines. No, nobody does that. They also will use third-party advertising engines. And they won't build their own identity and access management system. There's no point. There's expertise in building these things. Let the experts do that and pick the best one. So it's everything. I mean, it's like sort of what isn't a digital product. It really, I think that if we can think about this category as extremely broad and having unique subsets within it that might have peculiar risks, are also that will have some value to parse that taxonomy. So the last thing is weaponization, and it's not often a topic that manufacturers think about in terms of product safety, unless you're building like making a gun, I guess, which they should be thinking about that. But for digital products, we've already been thinking about this. There is some maturity around cybercrime and definitions and governance of cybercrime. And I'm going to talk more about this in the next session, but I'm going to posit that digital product design has a greater influence on the ability for a person to weaponize a digital product. And therefore, digital product manufacturers have a greater duty to prevent that and put safeguards in place. And there also is, I just want to acknowledge that there is also a intersection of cybersecurity and cybercrime. There's also an intersection of cybersecurity and personal information privacy and just privacy of everything, the previous ingredients that we looked at. So there's an overlay of that. It's not exclusive, or it's not an and, there's an overlay, and we'll talk about that next time. So some final thoughts here. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the digital product business model, which is largely quote unquote free, but it is not without cost. And we continue to pay for digital products with personal information. There's excellent work on attention and what is that? There's a whole book and a movement on it, and it's very, very good. But I think it takes us away from the pragmatic piece of like, we are literally paying with personal information. The personal information transactions in bulk and in singular, transaction-based, singular transaction-based, are really the currency fuel that enable all of this to work. And the scale is really staggering, and we just really still don't have any clear visibility into that for digital products. So I have to mention that. And then also I want to mention a couple other things of data controller failure. So I've been on this bandwagon for several years now, but data controller is language out of GDPR. And I think this language fails at a certain level. And it is failing because we are seeing digital product manufacturers say, not it for data controller. I'm not the data controller. I built the product, but I'm not the data controller. And I think that is disingenuous to the point of lying, really. Because how can you hold someone else accountable when they didn't make the decision about the third parties? They didn't make a decision about the ingredients. They have no control over where the information is sharing. How can they be the data controller? It's not right. So I think there's a problem there that needs some attention. The other thing, of course, is I've made it almost through this without really giving much airtime at all to AI. Those of you who know me will know that AI, there's nothing more artificial than the word AI. It is a arbitrary market term that is unenforceable as a term. It has to be defined. You cannot just say AI is a thing. It is not a thing. It's also it's a point in the continuum of software evolution, software maturation. And we got here only because of all of the prior work. AI as a software capability, or aspiration is probably a better word for it, has been in development since the 60s, 70s. This is not something new. And we just say now with commercial generative AI platforms, generative content platforms, this is AI. Before is not, after is. It's arbitrary. And there is no digital product, there is no AI digital product. We can talk about generative text, image, audio, code systems as a digital product. We can talk about a chatbot as a mode, as an interaction mode, or like a combination. Maybe it is a packaged product. And that can be another kind of product. The API can be a digital product, but it's kind of arbitrary. So next time, we're going to talk about governance, and we're going to talk about how product safety, especially for digital products, can provide a way to cohere the ideas that are floating around with safety, cybersecurity, and cybercrime, and how governance of digital products touches on organizational behavior and individual human behavior, which is sort of policymakers' comfort zone, but gets into governing digital product behavior and digital product ingredients. So that is all of that. I'm going to stop sharing. Whew. Okay.
Amazing, Lisa. We've been working closer together over the last weeks, and I feel like I wrote in one of the comments, one of the users, one of the viewers, once you see this, you can't actually unsee it, right? And I've been testing it out a little bit, thanks to Lisa. I try not to use the term online safety anymore. I use product safety. And I actually did a big test the other day, or last week I posted, I did looking for harms where school children were seeing porn on their devices. And I found it in 14 countries and 10 US states as evidence online of it. And I wrote a post blaming the product 100%. And I just wanted to see what happened. And it was interesting to see the reaction. It's a mindset thing. If you say, no, this is a product. And I got that from you, right? Because when I talk to you, it was like there's a harm and you're looking for a blame. And then you're like, no, we need to look and see what in the product is kind of making this possible, right?
Yeah.
Like that's where you map the harms to the product functionalities or
exactly. And it's interesting how just like this one kind of language framing shift helps. It's like I don't know why I always think about like pachinko balls coming down, but it's sort of just like one thing that helps kind of reframe things below it and make it more effective, hopefully. And that's the idea here.
No, I think it definitely will. Do you want to like comment about why I shouldn't use the word online safety? Because I feel like this is something we could all just kind of consider in our use of language.
Yeah, well, it propagates the idea that we're responsible for our own safety. That is one thing. And also it's you're not in a place. It also like reifies this idea that you're walking in a common, like in a public common space. You are not. You are using a commercial product who's who has to make a profit and satisfy board members. So it's a really I don't know. It makes it's kind of a whitewashing kind of, that's not quite the right phrase, and it's kind of an objectionable phrase anyway, but I can't think of the right phrase. And also, I will say safety also. Well, it was funny. I'm doing another podcast, and the proposed language was, can safety work where privacy hasn't? And it's like, oh, not safety alone, product safety. So that's another important thing, is because people will leave off the product bit, and that's an important kind of issue too. Because if we go broad with safety, we've got all kinds of ambiguity, and there's a lot of people staking claims on safety broadly for technology and digital products.
Yeah, the other person that has managed to express all of these thoughts in ways that help me understand it on a much deeper level is Andrew Lidell from the EdTech Law Center. And he said something I will never forget, and I say it all the time. And now I'm going to say your thing about the cars flipping over too all the time. That like you wouldn't put a piece of, in a school, you wouldn't put a piece of gym equipment there and tell the school to they have to build it. Here's the pieces, they have to build it, and it falls apart because it's not safely built, or then you wouldn't blame the school or the children for using it, because you're not supposed to put it there unless it's really like foolproof, safe. And digital products aren't like that yet. I say yet. We'll get there, especially with initiatives like this. We'll get there, but yeah, it's a mindset change, and I'm really grateful for you that you've spoken about this, and we'll work more closer together to get this out.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for working with me on this. And I hope, it's been a long road. We've been at this for like 7 going on 8 years. And it's taken a long time to really crystallize the thinking, because the language just wasn't there. The language set us off in weird ways, like the online world. And, it took me fully all this time to package this. And my greatest hope is that this is consumable, understandable, and applicable, that anybody who hears this can apply this and use it.
Okay, thank you so much. There's this massive delay. Those of us who see the end, we actually finished 5 minutes before you see it. For whatever reason, something's going on with this live stream today. So yeah, thank you so much. And come back in 2 weeks' time at exactly the same time, same place. And see you then.